والأخذ بالتجويد حتم لازم من لم يصحح القرآن آثم لأنه به الإله أنزلا وهكذا منه إلينا وصلا وهو أيضا حلية التلاوة وزينة الأداء والقراءة. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم أما بعد اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In today's lesson we're going to be covering 7 topics. The first is the permissibility of music in the Quran, what that means exactly. The second is the speeds of recitation, the different paces that we can recite with. The third is beginning our recitation. How do we begin? Okay, I want to recite. What's the first thing and second thing that I say? Connecting two surah, connecting the end of a surah to the beginning of another surah. How do I do that if I wanted to connect it? Fifth, the Arabic letters. And number 6, the harakat. And then lastly, hisab al-jumal, the sentence calculation. So first, music in the Quran. It is true and it is a fact that we should beautify our voices when reciting the Quran. However, not at the cost of the Tajweed rules. The proof for us beautifying our voices is the hadith عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس منا من لم يتغنى بالقرآن. He is not from amongst us the one who does not beautify his recitation when reciting the Quran. وزاد غيره يجهر به رواه البخاري. صحيح hadith in Bukhari. Some of the narrators they added that means to recite it in a loud voice, but there are other backing narrations specifically talking about the beauty in one's recitation. If you know the word yataghanna, it actually means to sing. We don't want to translate it as to sing because we don't sing the Quran. It's not a song or it's not music. So we shy away from using that word sing, even though if we looked at the definition of sing, then it probably would be befitting. But we're not going to use that word because we don't want to compare the Quran to music or anything like that. But we see in the hadith that one is encouraged to beautify the recitation in the Quran as best as he can. That doesn't mean that you try so hard to make your voice beautiful. No, you have the voice that Allah gave you. You recite with tajweed and you have a little bit of a tone, a little bit of a rhythm when you recite. Those are the most beautiful recitations anyway. Those voices where they do too much and they're singing and hitting all these crazy notes. I mean, this is not, as we're going to see, the ideal way to recite the Quran. So, Dr. Ayman Suwaid, he says that we should not treat the Quran like music. But there are people that take the science of music and they implement it in the Quran. So he's going to talk about the permissibility of doing that. So he says that the two main studies in this science of music, or maqamat, which you might hear a lot, which a lot of the mashayikh do. I mean, countless mashayikh. You name a shaykh, 99% he's doing this science. That's why we're discussing it and discussing the permissibility of it. So the two main sciences are the different vocal ranges or vocal pitches and the duration of lengthening. And Dr. Ayman Suwaid, as you can imagine, he says that sometimes these rules would contradict with the rules that are already in place, the tajweed rules that are already in place. And if that is the case, then it is impermissible and it is haram. And the person who does so is sinning. If what you're doing, if tajweed tells you to go right, the music is telling you to go left, and you follow the music over what the tajweed says, when tajweed, we know that it is how the Prophet ﷺ used to recite. We have mutawatir chains saying that this is how the Prophet ﷺ recited the Quran. So you're now changing that in order to beautify your voice. So your intention is very clear. You're not reading the Quran for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're reading the Quran so people can say you have a beautiful voice. So in that sense, it is impermissible and haram if you go against the tajweed rules. He says, as for the vocal ranges, right, changing your pitch when reciting, he says there's nothing wrong with it if you're doing it from letter to letter. From word to word, you change your pitch, or even from letter to letter, you change your pitch. There's nothing wrong with it. The issue is when you do it within a letter. So if you have an elongation letter, when you're midding, instead of saying وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, instead of saying that, you want to change your pitch within that one letter, that one alif, al-mad, you want to change your pitch in it and say ضَالِّينَ. So you kept changing your pitch throughout that. he said this is impermissible, as the scholars have stated. And also within a letter like a gunna, for example, instead of saying amma yatasa'alun, you want to say amma yatasa'alun, doing too much of this vocal pitches. The issue with it is that you're actually adding letters, as Dr. Ayman al-Shiswahi says. Whenever you change your pitch within a letter, you're adding a letter. This is what we do when we do nabr. This is a rule we're going to take later. We actually do this. You're supposed to change your vocal pitch to show that the next letter is mushaddad. Like in dhalin, we say dhalin. What am I doing? What is this? Al. What is that little jump? What is that? That's me changing a vocal pitch. I'm showing you that the next ra is mushaddad by me doing that, right? So if I just go do that anywhere that I want, I say dhalin. Or for example, in the ya mushaddad, we say ayyi. Ayyi. I'm changing my pitch to show that the ya is mushaddad. So I'm actually adding a ya in a place where I should. Ayyi. There is two yas. There's mushaddad. But sometimes it's not mushaddad. I'm not going to say dha and be switching my vocal pitch. So in that case, if we're adding letters, if we're doing it within a certain letter, Dr. Ayman al-Shiswaid, he says this is forbidden by the scholars. And as for the duration of lengthening, we already have set durations. We already have, this is 4 harakat, this is 5 harakat, this is 6 harakat when you're elongating. Or for the ghunan, this is the longest ghunna, this is the shortest ghunna, this is the second shortest, this is the longest, you know? So we already have set scales for everything. Everything's already proportioned. So for you to go and take the lengths that the music wants you to recite with, in order to make dhalin sound nice, yeah, we know it's supposed to be 6 harakat, it's supposed to be dhalin, it's supposed to be 6 harakat, but you want to beautify your voice, and the only way to really get this pitch, because I'm reciting in a certain style, the only way to make it work is if I do 8, 9, or 10 harakat. So I have to say dhalin, and I just made it like 20 harakat in order to do what? In order to make my voice sound nice. When you do that, you're contradicting the tajweed rule that's already there, and then it becomes impermissible, and you are committing a sin if you know that what you're doing is incorrect, and you're preferring the rules of music over the rules of the Quran, of the rules of tajweed. So then Dr. Ayman al-Shiswaid, he concludes by saying this. He's like, okay, what about the person who follows, the science of music, but does not contradict anything in the Quran? He said, listen, I'm gonna put tajweed first, but I'm gonna, I want to beautify my voice, and I want to take this science in order to maximize the beauty of my voice. Possible? Obviously, we're gonna study this music. It's the best way to get a better voice, and I'm gonna take that knowledge and put it in the Quran. He said, if somebody wants to do this, then the bare minimum penalty is that they'll lose their khushu' in prayer, their concentration in prayer, and when reciting the Quran. When you recite the Quran, you're supposed to be pondering over its meanings. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبُّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ? Do they not ponder the Quran? You're supposed to be pondering the meanings that are here. Instead of thinking of, now I'm about to go into this story, so I have to change my tone. And I'm up here on vocal pitch 8, I got to bring it down to a F. And it takes away from the concentration in your prayer. That's the bare minimum effect that it has. And some people use the excuse, I want to beautify my voice for those behind me and things like that. First of all, you can beautify your voice without learning the science. That's number one. Number two is focus on yourself before you focus on others. Make sure you have khushu' and you're concentrated in the recitation before you try to make others concentrated in that recitation. So the bare minimum, now Wallahu a'lam, it seems like there's no sin as long as it does not contradict the Quran, but bringing extra sciences in the Quran and things like that, unnecessary. If you listen to people who have, who recite the Quran beautifully, time and time again, and you keep reciting the Quran over and over, you're going to develop a tune of your own, and it's going to be unique to you, and it's going to be an enjoyable one to you. And that's the most important thing, that you enjoy your own recitation, so you continue to recite. And then if other people also enjoy your recitation, well, alhamdulillah, that's a good thing. Maybe you can lead prayers or recite Quran, and people will be happy with that. That's fine. But the most important thing is that you yourself enjoy your recitation, and that we're not just reading for other people, saying that so they could tell us we have a nice voice and things like that. So I personally would highly advise staying away from it, learning maqamat, watching maqamat, and delving into that science. Even the tajweed itself, we don't want to think about ahkam al-tajweed when reciting the Quran in your salah, and even in regular Quran. You don't want to think, especially in your salah, you don't want to be thinking about the ahkam al-tajweed. This is 6 harakat, I have to nabr here, I have to make this muraqqaq, oh that was idgham, I have ikhfa coming up. We don't want to think like that. We want to practice as much as possible outside of prayer. So when we're in our prayer, we have a correct recitation, we're reading the verses of Allah the way they're supposed to be recited, but then now we can focus on the ayat. I already memorized the ayah the correct way. So the only way I'm going to recite it is the correct way. I'm not going to recite it incorrectly after I repeated this verse 100 times and this page 200 times. I'm not going to go recite it incorrect. So now the tajweed, I don't need to worry about it in my salah. So now I get to have khushu' on the ayat that are being recited. So that's the main point. So yani, the fact that their khushu' is leaving because they're thinking about music is not a small thing. Yeah, that's a big deal. All right, so that's everything that has to do with music in the Quran. Second, the different speeds of the recitation. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would recite in 3 speeds: at-tahqiq, at-tadwir, and al-hadr. Slow, medium, fast. At-tahqiq, slow. This is how Imam Rushdi Suwaid would recite in his videos when he's teaching a class. Or most teachers who know how to recite, when they're teaching a class, would read like this. It takes about 4 minutes to read a page, maybe a little bit more than 4 minutes to read an entire page. He clarified that the term tartil is accomplished by reading any of the 3 recitations and is not limited to one speed as falsely claimed by some people. Oh, he's reading a tartil. What does that mean? There's only 3 speeds in the Quran. All right, now as for beginning our recitation, what do we mean by that? I want to recite the Quran, okay? So I grab the Quran and I open the Quran to any page, right? What do I want to do? I have to recite the isti'adha. فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if you recite the Quran, then seek refuge from Allah. This is in Surah Al-Nahl, the 16th Surah, the 98th Ayah. If you want to read the Quran, then فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Seek refuge with Allah from the shaitan al-rajim. So we say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, and we have an entire tafsir video on that statement. What does that mean? Why do we say it? What are the benefits of saying it? The whole 9 yards. So go check that out if you haven't already. So we say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Yani we have to. Even though Ibn Kathir said it's not most scholars say it's not a fard and you don't sin if you leave it off. But the Prophet ﷺ never left it off. It helps us to ward off the shaitan. It helps us that shaitan does not corrupt our understanding of the Quran. The Quran is never going to corrupt, but our understanding of it might get corrupt, or even our recitation, or maybe we lose interest, or maybe we get distracted. So, استعذ بالله. Say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, and then recite the Quran. As for the basmala, saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, he said that it is essential. It is essential in the beginning of the surah. Essential. And not really completely obligatory. Is it an ayah? Is it not an ayah? If you consider it to be an ayah, then of course you have to recite it. But there's some difference of opinion in that. We actually have an entire tafsir video where we discuss that. Is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim an ayah? What does it mean? All the benefits and virtues and things like that. So, he says it's essential to recite the basmala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the beginning of every surah, and we should do so. However, as for if I open up to the middle of a surah, say I open the Quran and I just jump to the middle, or it wasn't the beginning, right? Then I recite the isti'adha still. فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. But the basmala, saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, I have an option to say it or not to say it. And what you should actually do is look at the ayah, what is it discussing? And you should decide whether you should or shouldn't say it. Because there's some times where you should, and sometimes where you should not say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So for example, an ayah where you should not say it is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Baqarah, about shaitan, he said, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ. Verily, he only informs you of evil. So I'm not going to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, he advises you with evil. Who's he? Allah? Of course not. So we don't want to say the basmala there. We want to say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ. Also ayat that talk about adhab. We're not going to say Allah is the most gracious and the most merciful and then start talking about his punishment, right? So in cases like that, we wouldn't want to mention it. In cases where Allah is quoting the disbeliever, فَقَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, he's saying, yani Fir'aun is saying this. I'm not going to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, فَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, as if he did that with the intention of, so we don't, in some cases we do not say the basmala. In other cases, we really need to say the basmala. And the opposite applies. So for example, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ. He is the one who created you. I'm not going to say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ. I seek refuge from the shaitan, the outcast, the devil. He is the one who created you. Yani shaitan's the one who created us? Of course not. So there I need the basmala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ. So I hope that's clear. So just understand the ayat that you're reading. So, in the beginning of the surah, when I'm reciting the isti'adah, the basmala, and the first ayah of the surah, how do I recite it? Do I recite it all together? Do I pause between each? Dr. Imran Suwaid, he says, all of the four ways are all permissible. So, whether you said, A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim, stopped. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, stopped. And Alif Lam Ra, for example, and stopped. Or Amma Yatasa'alun, or Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Whatever the first ayah is, and you stopped, each one, jaiz. That's okay, that's accepted. And if you combine the first two, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, and stopped, Alif Lam Ra, jaiz. That's fine, you could do that. If you want to combine the second two and not the first one, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, stop, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, Alif Lam Ra, that's also fine. And if you want to connect it all, that's fine. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين, and you connect that, that's also fine. So all four ways are accepted. But what about, which is our topic number 4, connecting the end of a surah to the beginning of a surah? So Surah An-Naba to Surah An-Nazi'at, for example. If you pause on each one, that's jaiz, that's okay. وَيَقُولُ الْكَافِرُ يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ تُرَابًا, pause. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, pause. وَالنَّازِعَاتِ غَرْقًا, I stopped on each one, that's okay, that's number 1. Number 2, I combined everything, that's fine. ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والنازعات غرقا, that's okay. And if I want to combine the basmala with the first ayah and leave off the other surah, that's fine. ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا, stop, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والنازعات غرقا, that's fine. But the fourth is not okay. The only one that you cannot do when connecting surahs is combine the basmala to the end of the first surah and recite the first ayah of the second surah, because it is as though you're saying that this basmala is an ayah in the surah. Because there's an ayah in Surah An-Naba that actually has bismillah. إِنَّهُ مِن سُلَيْمَانَ وَإِنَّهُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. So if you're combining Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the end of the surah and then stopping, it's as though that's a part of that surah. So if I said, وَيَقُولُ الْكَافِرُ يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ تُرَابًا بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ وَالنَّازِعَاتِ غَرْقًا, it's as though that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim was a part of Surah An-Naba. So that one we do not do. We do not connect the basmala to the end of the other surah and stop. If you did connect the basmala, you have to continue. Or just don't connect the basmala at all. And of course, the Dr. Hayman Rushdi Suwaid, he urges us to be very careful and attentive when we want to connect ayat. Because when we stop on the end of an ayah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, we make it sakin. It's supposed to be Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, with the fatha. But because we stop, we make it sakin. So when you don't stop, you have to use the harakah. And sometimes it's going to be a tanween. So it's either harakah or tanween. Or sometimes it might have been a ta marbuta, so it turned from a ha into a ta. And the tanween may be followed by, tanween may be followed by a letter that you have to do idgham or ikhfa, or maybe even iqlab for, right? So we have to be aware of that. By continuing, there's this tajweed what I need to execute. The next ayah begin in a hamzat wasl, I have to skip that hamzat wasl. Or there's tanween and this is iltiqa as-sakinin, and there's a rule that I have to do. So if you don't know the rules, if you don't know what to do, then it's best to not continue. So to give you some examples, in Surah Al-Fatiha, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. نَسْتَعِينُ is the ayah. When we stop, we say نَسْتَعِين. We make a second. But if you want to continue, you have to say نَسْتَعِينُ. And then إِهْدِنَا, the first letter is the Hamzat Wasl. We talked about Hamzat Wasl. إِهْدِنَا, that Hamzat Wasl is taken out. Now we have a ha second, before it's a noon second. So you can no longer say إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِين إِهْدِنَا. And you can't even if you put the dhamma, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ إِهْدِنَا, no, the Hamzat al-Wasl has to come out. So instead of it being إِهْدِنَا with a kasra, now the letter before it's a dhamma. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِين إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِين نُهْدِنَا. نُهْدِنَا. So I went from إِهْدِنَا to نُهْدِنَا. When we connect, of course. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِين نُهْدِنَا. So you have to be aware of that if you wanted to continue. Or for example, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. هَاوِيَةٌ. That ha, which is actually a ta marbuta, I need to turn it into a ta if I want to continue and use the tanween and do idgham. هاوية وما. I have to know to do idgham there. So if you don't know, again, don't do it. Lastly, Surah Al-Ikhlas. قل هو الله أحد. The Hamza wasl in Lafdul Jalala, the name of Allah, we take it out. So it's followed by lam sakin. Sakin, iltiqa sakinain. We got a problem. We can never have two letters at a second meet each other. We'll talk about that later. Unless you're stopping, wal fajr, wal asr, stuff like that. But if you're continuously reading, never happens. So what do? We actually add a kasra on the noon sakin in the tanween. So قل هو الله أحد ni. قل هو الله أحد نilla. قل هو الله أحد نillahu الصمد. If you want to continue. Again, if you don't know the rules, then do not continue. The Prophet used to read every verse and stop. And he'd seek refuge where refuge is sought, and he'd ask for reward where the reward is sought in those ayat, and he'd ask for guidance and things like that. Pause. You get to the end of the ayat, just pause. No need to connect, yani. There's no reason to, especially if you don't know your rules. All right, the fifth topic is the Arabic letters. The Arabic letters are 28 written letters, but 29 pronounced letters, with the Hamza being the letter that isn't written, but it is pronounced. The Arabs, they didn't used to write the Hamza, but they used to pronounce the Hamza. And they never wrote it until Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, he came along and he added the Hamza. He took it and he added it in the part of the alphabet so people could know when there is and when there isn't a Hamza. All right? And yani, some time went by after his period. Then Nasr ibn Asim, he, at this time, there's no dots on the letters. The ta, the ba, the tha, all look the same. The jim, the ha, the kha, all look the same. Ayn, ghayn, same. No dots. So, of course, you can imagine, if you're not a master in the Arabic language, you're not going to know how to read at all. You're not going to know how to read the Quran. So, Nasr ibn Asim, he took all the letters. He put the ones that look alike next to each other. So, he's actually the one who organized the alphabet. He put the ones that look, so the ba looks like this. Okay, they all look the same. I put them next to each other. Dot, one dot, two dots, three dots, and he chose what kind of dots to do for his own reason. So he's the one who would add the dots on the letters. They did not exist before him. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Quran had no dots, no harakat even, and the Hamza wasn't written at that time. And Abu Aswad al-Du'li would even later add the harakat as well, because the harakat, even till today, like a lot of Arabic books you read, you pick up some of these books, no harakat on them. You're just supposed to know your i'rab, know your rules, and you're supposed to know how to put the harakat on them. But of course, again, it's very difficult to do, especially for someone who's not that good in Arabic. So they added these harakat on us, on the words. Okay. Side note, yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He used these great men to preserve the Quran. The Quran did not change. Nothing is changing. This is the same exact written Quran that was with the Prophet ﷺ. But they're just adding little symbols on top. And we have an entire video that talks about symbols. But they're just adding little symbols to help us pronounce it. So we know, is it na'budu, na'budi, na'buda? Is it tanween? We need to know, right? We need to know. We're not masters in Arabic to be able to know all the harakat. So that's what these great men did. The Hamza wasn't written until Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi. He came and he wrote that Hamza. And then Nasr ibn Asim, he came and he added the dots on the letters and he organized the alphabet that we know today, alif, ba, ta, tha, jim, ha, kha, to the end of it. And Abu Aswad al-Du'li would add the harakat, those diacritic marks, those vowels on those letters. And that's what we're talking about now, the harakat. Now, in any language, you can't pronounce a word without vowels. The word cover in English, if you took the O and the E out, the vowels, you'll have CVR, and you can't read it anymore because there's no vowel. So same thing in Arabic. But the Arabic vowels are actually diacritical marks. So if you have a fatha which appears on top of the letter, it's called a fatha, which means to open. And istilah, and like the Islamic definition is to open your jaw. Ba, fa, la, this is a fatha. If you have it under the letter, it says a kasra. So we drop our mandible, our lower jaw, and we say bi, fi, li. This is a kasra. And then we have the dhamma, which means to make a circle. Dhamma shafatain, make a circle with your lips. Bu, fu, lu, and like that. So those are the three harakat that you would have on a letter. And every letter is either mutaharrik, meaning it has a harakat, or sakin, and it does not have a harakat or any vowel associated with it. Sakin letters cannot be pronounced by themselves. You need the help of a harakat before it. That's a rule. Memorize that. Write that down. You ever read in Quran, there's a sakin letter, you automatically know I need the letter before it to jump on top. I need the letter before it to use to be able to pronounce this letter. So make sure that you understand that. All right, and the second letter is just a letter without a haraka. So if I said sa, si, su, how do I pronounce the sin with the haraka? Well, I mean the sin that's second, you can't pronounce it. Okay, what if I introduce the letter before it in order to help me pronounce it? Yeah, okay, you can do that. S or bes or fes, that sin sound, that's the sin second. I'm not saying asa, asi, asu, I'm saying s. I'm stopping and I'm pausing on that. That would mean that the sin is sakin, sakin. And the word sakin just means to be quiet. And a little side note, the alif is always sakin, and before it is always a fatha, always a fatha. And that's going to help you in some tajweed rules that we'll take later. So just memorize that for now. The shadda, the huruf mushaddad, they call them the stressed letters, the duplicated letters, the double letters, whatever you want to call it. Duplicated or double is probably a better translation. Literally, a letter that has a shadda means you take that letter, you times it by 2, the first letter takes a sukoon, the second letter takes a haraka. So if we said ba with a shadda and a fatha, that equals a ba sakin and then a ba then, meaning after a ba with a fatha. A fa mushaddad with a dhamma, that means it's a fa sakin and then a fa with a dhamma. Lam with a shadda and a kasra, that means it's a lam sakin, then a lam with a kasra. So alla, affa, ahha. You see I'm pausing and doubling that letter. Whatever. Assa, and so forth. This is a shadda. That's a haraf that is mushaddad. And we discussed these before, so this shouldn't be anything new to any of us. But as for that shadda, just one thing to note, that when a word ends in a shadda, you still say it. Because you know how when we end on the word, we take the haraka off, you leave the shadda there. So, for example, Surah Al-Baqarah, هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنْ. Even if I'm stopping, I can't say lahun. No, lahun. Even if you're stopping. But what if it was in the beginning of the word, which it appears sometimes because of idgham. Otherwise, it wouldn't start with a shadda. But mandudim musawwama, dim musawwama, that meme has a shadda. If I start with that meme with a shadda, if a word starts with a shadda, what do? Do I say musawwama? No, I just ignore it. I don't pronounce it in that case. And even it doesn't have to be the letters of ghunna, noon, and meme. It could have been anything. We do nabr, mustaqar, when it appears at the end of the ayah, and we're stopping. Mustaqar. I have to show that there's a shadda there, so I do this thing called nabr. So the shadda at the end, we keep it there. At the beginning, we take it off. Finally, hisab al-jumal, sentence calculation. This isn't really a tajweed science. Hisab al-jumal, calculating sentences and calculating letters. However, it's a very well-known science. It's been around before Islam. It's still used in today's day and age. My grandmother uses it frequently. There's a scholar by the name of Bassam Jarrar. He actually takes this science and applies it to the Quran and derives many meanings and rulings. He's not giving you tafsir, but a lot of miracles that he pulls out of it. The thing is with the Quran, you take any science there is and apply it to the Quran, you'll find miracles in it. You took mathematics, you apply it to the Quran, you'll find miracles in it. Surah Al-Baqarah is 286 ayat. Divide that in half. That's 143. Look at that middle ayah. It has the word wasata in it. Middle. The middle ayah. Subhanallah. The ayah that's in the middle has the word middle in it. Ayat al-Kursi, we talked about the symmetry in it. So if you took geography and you want to apply geography to the Quran, you'd find symmetry in the Quran. Ayat al-Kursi, we literally have a series on it, how it's symmetrical. Subhanallah. Ayat al-Kursi. And any science, you took science and applied it there, you'd find miracles in science, in the galaxy, in the universe that they're discovering now in the past year or 10 years or 100 years that's been in the Quran for 1400 years, right? Any science you bring here, you want to bring biology to it, you want to bring language to it, of course, you want to bring accuracy to it, anything, consistency, anything you bring towards the Quran, you will find miracles in it. So they take Hisab al-Jumal, they apply it to the Quran, they find some really, really nice miracles. And we're not going to say that these things are coincidences. In Surah Al-Kahf, they took an ayah, calculated, that talked about the cave, and the number 309 came up. And they were in the cave for 309 years, for example. These are miracles, of course, and they were set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, some people go into extremes and they would start saying, "Oh, they're predicting when Yom Al Qiyamah is and how long they're going to live and things like that." And at that point, of course, it's just kufr, and you're just you're disbelieving in the qadr of Allah and how these things are unknown. And He told us they're unknown, so there's no way you can know them. There's no secret code for you to find out something that Allah already told you you're not going to know. But anyways, how are these scaled? They put them in an order. There's an Eastern order and a Western order. We'll just give you one of them. The first is Abjad Hawiz, and this is like the letters. So Hamza, Ba, Jim, Dal, Ha, Waw, Za. But they have this phrase to make you memorize it easier. حطي كلم سعفص قرشت ثخذ ضاضغن. So you take this order and you apply numbers to them. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When you get to 10, you start counting by 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Then when you get to 100, you start counting by hundreds. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. So, for example, the Hamza would just be 1 because it was the first one. But if I jump all the way to or if I did my name, for example, Muhammad, the Meme is a 40. I look at that list, I see what the number, okay, 40. Meme is 40. Okay, the Ha, what is the Ha? We look for the Ha. It is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th. Is it 8th or 7th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the Ha is the 8th one. So then we put an 8 for the Ha, and then another meme for the another 40 for the meme, and then a 4 for the Dal. We add that up, that's 92. So Muhammad, the number 4 is 92. So they take this and they apply it. It's just a science. The reason why we bring it up is just so anything that has to do with Quran, anything people take and they apply in the Quran, we want to be aware of it. We want to know what it's talking about. This is a Quran class. We don't want to have anything hidden from us. We don't want somebody to say, "Do you know what Hisab al-Jumal is?" And you just say, "No, I never heard of it before." At least we heard of it. Now, do you have to dive into it? Do you have to know this stuff? Not really. Am I going to test you on what values the letters are? Absolutely not. It's really not important for us. But just a general understanding of what it is, what it comes from, music in the Quran, what is it that people are doing, what is permissible, what is impermissible, where do we draw the line, and things like that. So alhamdulillah, that's the end of our lesson. Just a very quick summary. We want to beautify our voices with the Quran, but not at the cost of tajweed. And we definitely don't want to waste our time learning some kind of science when we could be using our time more beneficially, like learning the Quran, memorizing it cover to cover, or memorizing a hadith, or getting beneficial knowledge, instead of wasting our time trying to beautify our voices for the people, right? Beautify your voices and do it for the sake of Allah and for the people, no problem, but do it naturally while you're khash in the ayat and not, spending years studying a certain science that isn't bringing about any benefit. We talked about the 3 speeds of the Quran, the way we recite it: at-tahqiq, tadwir, and hadr. So we have that slow, medium, and fast pace. And we talked about beginning your recitation, how we must say A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim regardless of where we open to. And Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it's essential to say it when in the beginning of the surah. But if in the middle of the surah we don't say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we don't have to say it. Sometimes we really should say it, and sometimes we really should not say it. And if you wish to connect the isti'adah, the basmala, and the first ayah, you can do whatever you want. Connect 1, 2, all together, whatever you wish. But connecting 2 surahs, you can do whatever you wish, except taking the basmala and connecting it to the end of the last surah. We don't do that because it's as though you're making that a part of that. The Arabic letters are 28 written letters, 29 spoken letters. Ahmad al-Farahidi, Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, he took that unwritten hamza and he added it. So now it's 29 spoken and written, and there's nothing that's not written. Nasr ibn Asim, he then later came, he organized the letters that looked the same, and then he started putting dots on them. So we know the difference between a ta and a tha and a jim and a ha and so forth. And then Abu Aswad al-Du'li, he came and he put harakat. So we know if it's ba, bi, or bu, or if it's sakin. And similar to every language, we need vowels. Our vowels in Arabic are those harakat, those diacritical marks. The dash up top is called a fatha. Open your mouth. Ba, ba, fa, la. And then you have the kasra, the dash under the letter. Bi, fi, li. And we have the dhamma, bu, lu, du, which looks like a small miniature wow. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.